Good day, Scrawny doth haveth the skinny. You're watching Fantasyland. You didn't think I'd be back so soon. I didn't think I'd be back so soon. But it turns out HLTV's hitting us with a curveball, and we have not one, but two online CS2 events coming at you this week. They're also one event of fantasy per tournament, which means it's group stage and playoffs all wrapped up into one. This isn't like the IEMs where we have divided. We don't know who's going to make it to playoffs. We don't know who's playing who. For Thunderpick in a few days, we don't even know what the groups are. And yet here we are staking our fantasy seasons on two what feels like bogus banana cups. I'm a little upset. Somebody's going to do really well on these events, finish in 1%, and it could be the defining factor that wins them the season. I feel like right now would be a really good time for HLTV to just let off the gas pedal since CS2 is out. Everybody's working with limited knowledge. We had Sydney on CS2, but at least that's still LAN, and you guys saw the results that were coming out of there. So what the hell's about to happen online? Yeah, is what it is. We've got to do them if we want to keep playing for the top spot. But a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth this week having to record this video. Just being real with y'all. All right? Talking from the inside. Alas, IEM Sydney playoffs, the Druids, top 30%. Honestly, the fact that I went so hard on Monacy and JKS, I went that big on G2 that I barely had enough money to get a second phase player. Tried to bank on Shuhei, who drops negative 25 points. I mean, I'm super happy with 30 points because this could have been way worse having missed the Monacy target that bad, or the G2 double pick. But luckily didn't have Hooksy, who would have been worse. I think that bogged down a lot of people. The fact that so many people had Hooksy, Shuhei, and JT, you know, thank God I had JT because the complexity run saved me. Good shout, Rain. Good shout, JT. Whatever, is what it is. Not the best event, not the worst. Gave me a few points. Gave me 10 points for the leaderboard, which puts me in second. Again, we knew Maniac was swinging, and swing he did. He has passed me by 1. It's going to be a tight end of the season until one of us gets a 1% at Roobet. Roobet Cup 2023, folks. This is what we're working with. GSL groups, so 2 teams per group advance to playoffs. It is best of 3s. Each team plays every team in their group once, and the 2 best teams move forward. It could be decided on round difference for all we know. This is a whack format. It's 2 parts of an event, but only one fantasy event. Like I said earlier, you have to choose players who are going to win this event before you even see them play in group stage. Every round of playoffs that you have a player not competing is a round of negative points, which is -6 every time for missing a lane. So somebody who's not in playoffs, and we're talking, of course, single elimination, 3 rounds, you're getting -18 points per player if a player misses quarterfinals, -12 if they miss semis, -6 if they're not in the grand final. So honestly, we got to shoot for players that are going to be on teams that should at least place top 8, which, again, we don't even know which teams will play one another in the playoffs. This is crazy. I feel like we're rolling dice, baby. We're out here playing the gambling man's game. But we got to do it. Gun to our head, folks. We gotta do what's asked of us.
Yes, master. We places the HLTV fantasy. We does. Ooh.
What the f is about to happen, man? Heroic have a new player. It's all online. Yeah, crazy. But let's get into the predictions, okay? Group A. Whew. I think Eternal Fire could play better than expected. Dupree for Heroic is a huge question mark. They've lost their in-game leader and their opper. So we're talking about Stown as primary op. I'm just going to go for some guessing here. Again, a lot of this, dude, take it with a grain of salt. Swing for the fences however you damn choose. I don't think that my advice is worth much for an event that has so many unknown variables, but I appreciate you coming to check in anyways. Additionally, the Thunderpick Championships video will be out once the groups are released because I ain't doing shit until I at least know what groups look like. Okay? That's crazy. So I'm just going to go ahead and say Eternal Fire and Heroic. I think Heroic's individual level should shine through. You're talking about 4 players who made a massive roster change that shook up Danish Counter-Strike. They have to prove that they can do this without Cadian, and I think they'll be very hungry to do so. Alongside Eternal Fire. I'm not going to underrate Aurora here. I'm not going to underrate Furia, but I think that Xantares is just he's a reckoning online. His price has actually been brought down from 250,000 to 230,000. And he's not the only player who's gone through that exact change. Donk. Yeah, that's right. New kid on the block. Big hype prodigy. Donk also from 250 down to 230K. In Group B, I anticipate that Spirit and Virtus.pro will take this. I bet both teams make it through. Movistar Riders looked good back at Pro League, but Movistar Riders looks better on LAN than they do online. And I think Spirit is a team that you can put a lot of stock in, because if I were to ask you a question along the lines of which of these teams is comfortable online, you have to put Spirit towards the top of that. They play more online than anybody else. They're banking on young players who get to play in their rooms and compete, and I think that that's going to be a solid team to put a little bit of stock into for, at the very least, one player in your draft. Group C, this is the most competitive one between Astralis, 9, Big, and Apex. You guys know me, when it comes to online, I rate Big highly, and I will again, because Big are competing in the Big offices. It is 5 players side by side on their computers, and I think that just gives your dimension of team play a whole other level. But Asterisk earlier today, October 24th, Big went ahead and lost to 9 Pandas, Seized's new team. And, you know, I think that CS2 is going to be a little wobbly for Big at first. I think they're one of the teams that could struggle. Any of these teams could struggle. It's all CS2. We haven't seen some of these teams play CS2. Again, there is so much, there's so many questions. Ridiculous. But I think that in this group, for C, I'm going to give it to Big, and I'm going to give it to Astralis. Astralis, towards the tail end of CSGO, had some solid online results that ended up qualifying for a couple of events. And, yeah, I think Astralis and Big. 9, Hades is having a rough time, folks. Hades was the backbone of this 9 roster for quite some time. His transition to CS2 has not been smooth. Apex, CS2, I would say maybe Jacob. Jacob's got some stock in him, but any oppers, for the most part, to me are still red flags, barring Monacy and Brokey, the only 2 who really prove that they've still got it in this new version of Counter-Strike. And then last but not least, Group D, where I think Ninjas will underperform, Fnatic will underperform, Monty, and this is like the risk of my group prediction, I'm going to say OG. But OG could easily be replaced by Ninjas and Fnatic. I think Monty is the clear favorite of Group D. I think not having a Monty player would be a missed opportunity. So, get in there. All right, let's review. That is Heroic and Eternal Fire, Virtus.pro and Spirit, Big and Astralis, Monty and maybe OG. All right, I say OG just because I'm going to draft one of their players, and we'll get to that in a moment. I think that there's a price tag here on OG that just can't be ignored. But alas, we go forward. I want to take a quick look at the most picked players so far for this event. I think that this is information we usually don't cover, but is worth taking note of, because sometimes you can get away with risks. You know, sometimes there's somebody like Hooksy who's picked by 80% of all drafts, and even if you don't put much stock in Hooksy, he frees up so much money that if everybody else takes that negative rating, it doesn't hurt you nearly as much, because at least you still have as much money to play elsewhere. You know, you play the numbers, baby. And right now we have, I mean, even the numbers of people playing this fantasy event is ridiculously low. We're not even above 10,000, 8.5 thousand. Of those 8.5, there's a big scatter of cheap players at the moment, because I think people are trying to shoot for a Donk Device double wombo combo. If you've got Donk and Device, solid bets, right? Device, there's an unknowingness around CS2, but Donk has a lot of hype behind him, and if it was just based on his rating, he'd be 250K, 230K, solid price point for a guy like this. But I mean, Bro, Borup, Config, Norbert, these are all eco picks. These are all people just trying to keep enough cash in order to afford the 2 gold cards you see up top. I'm going elsewhere. Here's my team. Goblins. All right? We've got Double Spirit in Art Frost and Chopper. Now, I've had the pleasure of watching Art Frost back at the last season of We Play Academy League that I commentated online. Art Frost at the time was a newcomer to the league. Kid's got crazy mechanics, was a little bit too aggressive, a little too wild. He has since been refined because he's now on the main Spirit team working with Chopper. And honestly, alongside our boy Donk, who's making up massive ratings, Art Frost is there. Both Art Frost and Zontix, the two other players from Spirit that you probably know less about, the others being Chopper and Magix, they're worth keeping an eye on for this. Just because of Donk's price tag, I sort of don't want to put that much stock in Spirit. Remember, we need teams that make it into playoffs. And yes, they dominate online. Yes, they could straight up win this event. I truly believe Spirit could just win this event. But I'm still a little tempered and a little hesitant in putting all of that money on our boy Donk, because these other groups that we're looking at have a ton of rating to be grabbed. Remember, everybody plays each other 3 times. That means 3 games of rating before you even get to your playoffs. 4, 5, 6 matches of points to be grabbed by whoever wins this event. Dude, that is insanity. The amount of games, the amount of rating, huge points. This is going to be, this is going to be one of those events where your best performing players end up with like 150, 200 points. I swear to God. It's like a pro league, but it's all online. I continue. I'm going Art Frost, easy op activation, 80% heavy, dude. This guy's swinging with the big green. He's playing well in CS2. And I'm going to take Chopper here just because, again, I want to free up money for my other teams. The other teams that I'm banking on are indeed Big and Monty and our Nexa OG pick. Now, I don't expect OG to maybe get into the playoffs, or if they do, go very far, but I do anticipate Nexa probably bringing in more than what he's worth in terms of the fantasy price tag. Crimbo and Demka. Now, Demka of Monty, when you look at the Monty players, it is only Waro 2K who generally rates higher than Demka online. You go to LAN, Waro falls off, Demka stays the same. Over the last 3 months, he's got a 1.12 rating online and LAN. Some Die Young and Waro, well, they'll fluctuate. SDY plays better on LAN, a little weaker online. Inverse for Waro 2K. Demka is the consistency of this Monty roster, and he's got a little place in my heart due to last season when I pulled him out for the Paris Major and got one of my best finishes ever. I don't usually draft a lot of Monty. I did in Sydney with Bro, and I just like the direction of this team. So I'm going to go with Demka, the most consistent piece of a team that should absolutely make playoffs and plays a lot online. Same for Big. Crimbo, I think there's a lot of correlation between him and Demka in the sense that both players are from teams that play a lot online, mixed between LAN and online, plus the buff of having Big in the offices playing alongside one another. Now, that recent Big result has got me a little nervous. I'm a bit sketched with Big, which is why I'm not willing to go 2 players from Big. It's the same as back at the Blast Showdown. I went heavy on Big. They get to the grand finals, but due to the amount that I put on Big and the less that I put in Cloud9, it ended up costing me. I have faith in Big, but I have most of my faith from Big belongs to Crimbo. And so I'm going to go for Crimbo again. I like the fact that he's a slow player. He stays alive. Tabson is somebody who can end up tanking a rating inadvertently just by being so aggressive, by being so in your face. And yes, he can finish games for Big at the top of the scoreboard, but Crimbo is someone who dies less. And so if things don't go well for Big, I know Crimbo's rating is still going to be solid enough to justify a $212,000 price tag. That's the price of Crimbo and Demka, by the way. So this to me is the Goblins roster. Again, Nexa, he's my cheap pick. I think 177 for a player who could definitely do damage online, play above that rating, and is in a relatively easier group, right? It's in a group of what I expect to be flops between Ninjas and Fnatic. So OG could definitely get replaced by Fnatic and move on into the playoffs. I have no doubt of that, but this is where we're sitting at the moment. Also, oh my God, that's right. Let's add in another variable because 9Z is playing in this event, which starts in 18 hours, and we don't even have that roster added to this fantasy event yet because 9Z haven't announced their roster. So there's a chance that maybe 9Z has somebody who's incredibly affordable based on rating, and I want to take that player instead. We'll see. There is no guaranteed or confirmed roster at this point because I'm going to be checking as often as I have to at least keep an eye on this 9Z team. This shit, man. Goddamn. Yeah. Anyways. Art Frost, Chopper, Crimbo, Demka, Nexa. That's where I'm sitting at the moment. Price points, 212 on Art Frost, Crimbo, and Demka. Feels like I'm putting enough stock in these three teams. Spirit, because they play the most online and have very promising young players who are super thirsty for a chance like this to take down other squads that are just on the brink of top 10 or sitting somewhere between 10 and 20. Crimbo is the most consistent piece of Big, unarguably, solid online. Demka, most consistent piece of Monty, solid online. That's why I'm putting my faith in those individuals. And all this makes sense. Now, there is a little variation here. We'll just talk possible changes. If you're not believing in Demka, instead, I suggest you go down to our boys on Apex, and you can fit Jacob in. Again, a team that could do solid work online, plays a lot of games online, and is relying on a very reliable rifler who I think benefits from the current peeker's advantage and aggressive nature of CS2. So you can very easily slot Jacob in for our boy Demka, finish off with, of course, still Nexa. This is an easy change if you're putting faith in Apex over top of Monty. And, of course, the same can be said for Big. You could go Jacob, Demka, Nexa. I like that having 212, 211k freed up for other teams, and that's the advantage of having Chopper from Spirit as our secondary pick. The problem is sometimes Chopper drops negative ratings. So something that I also want to put a little faith in, again, I'm keeping Crimbo just because I'm a big boy. Let's say instead of Chopper, we take something a little more consistent and something definitely that could pop off. Assuming Spirit go as hard as some are expecting with the amount of donk believers out there. If you benefit from Art Frost and Zontix, who are kind of riding the coattails of Donk at the top of the leaderboards for Spirit, let's go Art Frost Zontix, right? This raises, I think, like 15k over Chopper to Zontix instead. Chopper is one of the most picked eco players, as we can see here, 2,200 selections. That's about a quarter of the players playing. And if you can dodge that, tap into more of the Spirit win, then suddenly, where do we go from there? Well, I'm going to keep our boy Crimbo. Again, faith in Big, even though it's a competitive group. And then we're going to take our Nexa pick, because I think that for a 177, he's going to play better than Mino. And what this frees up, of course, is a little chunk of change, 197. We're operating under 200 instead of the 212 that we would have for our other player alongside Crimbo. Chopper replaced by Zontix, 200k instead. 200k, you're still getting some teams, right? You could go for Dupree, who I think has a very easy group, all things considered, versus Aurora Eternal Furia. Maybe not easy, but, I'm not doing it. Just saying you could. Again, you've got a little cheaper Monty pick if you go with Bro, but I think that Bro is one of the players who drops off for Monty online. I would pick Bro on LAN. I won't do it online. So this is why, again, it kind of takes away from this Zontix pick. I would love the Art Frost Zontix double, but again, I think there's rating elsewhere for Big and Monty or Apex to pick up that I don't want to leave on the table. Beyond that, sorry, I dropped Nexa. You could work with a 9-player. Goofy's playing pretty solid CS2. I wouldn't go double OG in a Regali pick. I think that's a little too sketchy. I don't know enough about Aurora. I haven't been watching them actively, but affording this guy, I looked at his numbers, pretty solid for an online player, and Aurora could catch some heroic pickers off guard. You can get Satsunito. This is kind of, again, like Jacob Light, as opposed to Bro Light. You get Jacob Light, Demka Light. Satsunito, I think, is a solid choice. I wouldn't touch Ninjas in Pajamas. I wouldn't touch Movistar Riders. I would not touch Art. Roy is an option. Norbert's an option. Calyx an option. Again, you're sitting at a lot of nice choices here. So to me, it's Art Frost and Chopper or Art Frost and Zontix with Crimbo, a +1 in Nexa. That to me is the winning formula. That to me is a plus, 15% finish. And best of luck with that. I'm currently sitting on Chopper so that I can go extra big on Monty because I think they'll farm that group. That's where we're sitting for what the hell is this thing called? The Roobet Cup 2023. I'll see you in a couple days for the Thunder Pick Championships as online CS2 gets started.